Chapter 6.
Quietly approaching the side of the house, I cautiously make my way towards my sister's bedroom window. Through the glass, I spot her asleep in bed. Gently tapping on the window, I observe her stir, then flick on her lamp, scanning the room before locking eyes with me. Waving, I see Amanda's initial confusion turn into recognition, and she hurries over. As she opens the window, I hand her my bag, which she sets down before accepting Valentine from me, allowing me to clamber through the window. "Sis," she exclaims, embracing me tightly. I breathe in her familiar scent, tears streaming down my face, before pulling away to meet her gaze. Despite being drenched from the rain, she pays no mind. A choked sob escapes her lips as she clutches her mouth. "I was hoping you would come back," she whispers, her eyes fixed on the baby in wonder. "He's beautiful," she manages to say, tears glistening in her eyes. Tenderly, I shut the window as she holds Valentine close, cherishing the scent of his tiny head. "I've missed you so much. Dad wouldn't let me search for you. He's keeping me on a tight leash," she confides, tears continuing to streak her cheeks. "Get some dry clothes, take whatever you need," she adds softly, nodding towards her dresser. I carefully search through my sister's drawers, mindful of the noise, so as not to disturb our sleeping parents down the hall. Eventually, I find some warm clothes and silently dress myself in her pajamas, though I have to adjust the waistband of the pants to keep them from slipping. My sister watches me intently before her emotions overwhelm her once more. "My gosh, you're so skinny," she sobs, collapsing onto her bed and studying my frail frame. She's not wrong. Most of my ribs are visible, and my hip bones protrude sharply. "I've shed so much weight. This is the thinnest I've ever been." "I'm fine, Amanda." I promise. I try to reassure her, reaching into my bag to retrieve a diaper. Fortunately, Valentine managed to remain dry, shielded by my shirt and the blanket wrapped around him. She shakes her head, her gaze fixed on my son as she cradles him gently. Taking a seat beside her, she scoots over on the bed, making room for me, and leans back against the wall. Together, we watch as my son drifts off to sleep in her arms. Resting my head on her shoulder, I suddenly find myself overcome with emotion. Amanda tries to comfort me, but I can sense her silent tears mingling with mine. Amanda was more than just a sister. She was my confidant, my closest companion. It's hard to surpass the bond between sisters, forged through shared hardships, growing up with the same parents, celebrating milestones together, and weathering heartbreak side by side. How times have changed. I've longed for someone to confide in, to share my thoughts and fears. Instead, all I've encountered are judgmental stares and disdainful remarks. Nobody bothered to ask how I was doing, nobody seemed to care. And I was foolish enough to believe that Beta Martin could offer assistance, naive enough to think that my mate would accept me. "Is Mom's okay?" I inquire, and she shakes her head sadly. "She's coping. She asked Dad for a divorce when he threw you out. But you know how Mom is. She'd never actually leave him," she explains, and I give a solemn nod. Divorce among mates is practically unheard of. The bond between mates is supposed to be unbreakable, preventing separation. It's meant to keep them united, two souls bound together. But apparently not for me. I can't bear the thought of spending the rest of my life feeling my mate's presence whenever he's with another woman, knowing it's not me. I dread the prospect of raising our son alone, of facing solitude. When Valentine starts to stir, I rise to fetch his formula, only to realize I have no bottled water. Amanda takes the bottle from my hand, passing my son into my arms. "How much?" Amanda asks, her voice filled with concern. 5 ounces, I reply, and she nods, opening the door just as Valentine's cries fill the room. Frantically, I attempt to quiet him by offering his pacifier, but he rejects it, spitting it out. My sister's expression shifts to panic as she glances at me. Hastily, she moves to shut the door, but before she can, it swings open with force, banging against the wall and startling Valentine into louder cries. In strides our father, his eyes immediately locking onto me. A low growl escapes him, and I instinctively shrink back. Amanda steps in between us, attempting to shield me from our furious father, but he shoves her aside, his gaze fixed on me with palpable anger. "Don't, Dad, please." I plead desperately, but he ignores my pleas, gripping my hair tightly. I cry out in pain, and so does the baby in my arms as I struggle not to drop him. Every instinct screams at me to push his hands away, but I cling to my son, holding him as if my life depends on it, enduring the painful tugging of my hair from my scalp. "Mom." Amanda's frantic screams fill the air, echoing through the house. I hear footsteps hurrying across the tiled floor in the hallway. "Daddy, please. Help me, Mom, please." I continue to beg as my mother rushes in, her expression a mix of shock and horror as she witnesses the scene unfolding before her. My father drags me towards the front door, his grip relentless despite my mother's attempts to intervene. My mother grasps his arm, her voice trembling with desperation. "Robert, please release her. She's holding an infant." He forcefully pushes my mother aside, his grip on my hair relentless as he drags me down the hall toward the front of the house. "Dad, please, it's snowing outside," Amanda pleads, her voice trembling with fear. My mother joins in, desperately trying to halt his advance. But my father remains unmoved, growling at them, his focus solely on me and my cries. With a determined stride, he reaches for the front door, heedless of their pleas. "Robert, she's our daughter." "Please," my mother implores, tears streaming down her face. "That woman is not my daughter," he snarls, his anger evident as his canines protrude menacingly. "Dad, please, it's freezing outside." Amanda pleads once more. I said no. "I won't have a rogue stupid for a daughter," he bellows, his face contorted with rage. "Please, Dad, adopt him." "I'll stay at the doghouse, just don't put him out." "He's your grandson," I manage to escape out amidst the chaos. With a menacing growl, my father shoves me out the door, his intention clear as he moves to slam it shut in my face. Desperation floods through me, and I make one final attempt. "Please, just look at him, Dad. He'll get sick out here. Just this day." "Then I'll leave," I plead, my voice cracking with emotion. My mother reaches out for Valentine, but my father forcefully pushes her back, blocking her path. "Robert, at least let him in." "Let me take my grandson," my mother pleads, her voice filled with anguish. For a moment, my father hesitates, his gaze shifting between me and my son. Finally, he releases his grip on me, his eyes falling upon my son. Then, he looks at my mother, who is now sobbing, her arms outstretched towards him, the same hands that had once cradled me as a child, now reaching out for my son. "Give your baby to your mother, but you stay there." "You aren't welcome here," my father commands before striding away. My mother rushes over to take Valentine from me, embracing me briefly before speaking. "I'll take care of him," she assures me, and I nod in agreement. "Amanda has his baby bag," I inform her. My sister grasps my hand tightly, her tears flowing freely as she nods in acknowledgement. "It's okay, Amanda. Everything's gonna be fine." "I'll be all right," I reassure her, speaking over my shoulder before my father's voice startles them both. "I'm sorry, I have to," my mother apologizes, closing the door firmly behind her. I offer a silent nod of understanding. Through the living room window, I see the curtain part and the lamp flicker on. My sister rushes towards the kitchen, while my mother settles on the couch beside Valentine, positioning him close to the window so I can see him. Leaning closer to the window, my mother opens it slightly to speak to me. "He has your nose," she whispers, a sad smile touching her lips. I return the smile, finding solace in her words as I settle into a chair on the porch. The chill of the rain-soaked night seeps through my sister's flannel pajamas as I sit, observing and listening to my mother inside, feeding my son his bottle. At least he's warm and dry. I console myself as I huddle on the chair, pulling my knees close to my chest in an attempt to fend off the cold and the biting wind. But soon, the shivers overtake me, and my teeth chatter so violently that I fear they might shatter. My mother taps gently on the glass near my head, her expression filled with anguish as she witnesses my discomfort. "Shift, my daughter. Shift to keep warm," she urges, her hand pressed against the cold surface. I haven't shifted yet, I confess, meeting her sorrowful gaze. Shifting holds immense significance among werewolves. It's a rite of passage, a symbol of maturity and one's future within the pack. For most wolves, it's a cause for celebration. But for me, it will be a necessity rather than a joyous occasion.
Thanks for this chapter.